Sales is about reducing your competition on opportunities you're pursuing, right? And that's the whole idea of today's training about unlocking federal set-aside opportunities. And this is a guide for small businesses because that's who gets the set-asides. So if you're a government contractor and you're trying to reduce your competition, increase your likelihood of winning, then you want to be pushing for set-asides. I did this a lot. My team and I, we've been doing this a long time, since 2018. And we've done over 400 set-aside calls, these ideas of bringing team partners together and pushing for an opportunity to go to set-aside. And I just wanted to start off by giving you an example of how successful this can be. And clearly, I'm going to give you my best story. There's a lot of good stories and okay stories, but I'll give you my best story. And so this story came out of the State Department. They reached out to me because they knew we were engaging industry. We were engaging you constantly through training and through other stuff we do. And the State Department reached out and said, hey, we're trying to reach HUBZone firms, but we can't reach them. We've tried different organizations. In fact, the reason the State Department called me is because the SBA said they should. They're like, oh, you should talk with Neil in the GovCon chamber. They reached out and the contracting officer said, can you help us? And can you get us a response within 24 hours? And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. You're putting too much pressure on the small businesses to respond in 24 hours. And he says, what do you need? Like, what do you need in order to make this happen? I said, well, let me use a template. So everybody responds on a template. Would you be willing to do that? They said, oh, absolutely. We just need to prove that they've got the skills and the experience. And I said, okay. So I threw together a quick template. They liked it. I sent it out to our community. And long story short, they got almost 100 responses inside of 24 hours to push an opportunity to HUBZone set aside. So one of the small business set asides. And within 2 weeks, they made the decision to set this aside to small businesses. That ended up being a $200 million set aside, all because these companies, these small businesses responded. The government wanted to set it aside, but if they were left on their own, they just had no idea how to reach you, how to reach buyers or sellers out there, right? When they went through me and my organization, we helped them make it happen. What I want to teach you in today's training is how can you be the one driving it? So you don't even nobody has to come to me. I mean, I'd love for you to keep coming to me, but you don't have to come to me, right? I can show you the process of what we do and how you want to be thinking about this, and you can start having success. Take responsibility of whether there are set-asides in the designation that you want, HUBZone, woman-owned, et cetera. Take responsibility. When you take responsibility, instead of putting the responsibility on the government, not blame, by the way, just responsibility. When you take responsibility, you put yourself in control. You give yourself control, which means now you can make it happen. We helped push many, many more set-asides just by teaching businesses like you that you can drive set-asides. That's totally something you can do. So today I'm going to talk about how to unlock the federal set-aside path to opportunities. I want to go down 3 different paths and then share my screen so I can go into the tools that the government uses and that you should be using. But the first thing I want to cover is just level set on what set-asides are, and in particular, why they're important. Second thing I'm going to cover is, and this I'll go back and forth in tool, is which agencies do the most set-asides. I also do other training where I say, which agencies love you the most, right? Love women-owned small businesses, love 8A small businesses the most. It's really easy to see which ones love your particular designation, your program the most. And then the last thing is I'm going to give you tips on how you can push opportunities to your set-aside choice. We've only got 23 minutes to get through all of this. And so let's get rock and rolling. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. And I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market as a small business owner. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we're going to have repeatable, predictable results. And that's what I want for you. It's something I think you can have around set-asides. You can have repeatable, predictable set-asides. Not all of them, but you can predict which ones you're going to have. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. It's called Government Contracting Success Newsletter. We just passed 13,000 users yesterday. I'm pretty excited about that. So Valentine's Day, everybody showed the love and pushed us past 13,000. Gus, my colleague and partner in this crime, is wanting us to get to 14,000 because he doesn't like 13, but I love 13. So make sure you subscribe though, because I put a ton of information in there. We share a lot of content in the GovCon Chamber and the newsletters where we push this out further. But let's begin with what are set-asides and why are they important? The first thing is, the way I describe it is it's just the government's attempt to level up the playing field. before the Small Business Act came along, before the government started realizing that a lot of us weren't getting a fair play, the larges were winning. They were taking all the money, right? And then the government said, well, let's make sure small businesses, which are the very backbone and strength of America, let's make sure they're getting access to the government contracting dollars. And then they kept doing that with additional small business programs. You can watch training I did on Monday about what are all the small programs and what are they for. But the whole idea of set-asides is to try to level the playing field. A certain amount of our contracts, we're going to try to get them to be competed at one of these 5 levels in particular. I'm only talking about what I call the big 5 small business programs. So instead of going full and open, which means billion-dollar firms like Lockheed and Booz or whoever can compete, we want to try to set it aside to small business set-aside. So SBSA is small business set-aside. You'll usually see that acronym used in a forecast, long-range acquisition forecast, which I'll show you. But the idea is now instead of larges and smalls competing, we're setting aside to small businesses only. And it's the same thing coming down, right? HUBZone program, women-owned small business, the 8A, small disadvantaged business set aside, and then service disabled, better known small business. These are the 5 main groups, right? Total small business set aside, or one of those 4 designations. And the idea is each one of those is covering down, like women-owned small businesses. We're not getting a fair play. The playing field was not level, so they created that program. They created the set-asides, and they're attempting to drive it forward. That's the idea behind the programs. And the last thing, what are set-asides, right? To me, from a sales perspective, I teach government contracting sales. I'm not here to teach about the FAR or how the government might say something. I'm here to teach you how to sell into the government and win, right? So everything I teach is around from that perspective. But for me, set-asides are about reducing the competition. The more you can sit there and get the government to reduce something down, the better you are. If you get it down to HUBZone, for example, I think there's like 4,500 HUBZones. There's over 300,000 businesses registered to sell to the government. If you can get something set aside to HUBZone, you've just reduced the competition by, I don't even know what that percentage is, but like 97, 98%. That's a good day. So keep that in mind as you move forward. The next thing I want to talk about is, and I'm going to go into the tool here in a minute, but one of the things I wanted to ask you before we move on is I get buyers who come in here all the time. I get larges. I just had a $1 billion firm reach out to me last week saying, or the week before last saying, that they want my help to find small businesses. I get that all the time, but buyers come in. You can see them in the chat. They might not be in there right now with the conference going on, but they're in here. They're looking. They look at the comments, and so put into the comments your company name. It's like, hey, we're a small business, or if you're a HUBZone, you don't have to say small business because it means the same thing. But put one of those 4 designations in. If you're one of those, let people know. And if you're open to connecting with others, if you're not, for example, one of these designations, mention that as well. Throw that in the chat that says open to connecting. Just make sure you're driving the relationships with letting people know who you are. Okay, let's talk about which agencies do the most set-asides, which agencies love you the most, right? The first thing I want you to understand is you need to learn how to find this information. I have it, and I seem like a wizard because I have it. The only reason I know it, the only reason I seem like a wizard, or if I dare call myself brilliant, no. The only reason I seem like I know so much is because I've taken the time to learn so much. And I'm trying to share that with you at a faster pace than it took me to learn, right? And so I'm going to teach you to learn how to find the agencies that like your set-asides. If you have a set-aside, why go to the agencies who don't use it and try to convince them to use it, compared to going to the agencies who do use it and say, hey, I'm really good and you like HUBZones, let's get together. One thing I did put here, and I go back and forth sometimes about being a little bit controversial, but I really feel passionate about this. I don't want you getting caught up by SBAs or the federal governments, but SBAs in particular, they're what I call gaslighting, right? And no offense to the people in the field, those SBA people are great, but at the headquarter level, they like to spit out these numbers. And women-owned small businesses, for example, they say they received more than $26 billion, 4.6% of the 5% goal. First off, why are you celebrating the fact that you didn't hit a goal that was so small? It was only 5% of the federal contract dollars. Women make up more than 50% of the contractors, yet you're only trying to get them 5%. And you can't even do that. I wouldn't keep a salesperson on if they couldn't hit a goal like that, right? It's crazy that they're doing it, but they're using this number 26 billion. But if you look at the stats, and I've done many trainings on this, you can go to govconchamber.com/ I think it's WOSB or something. Somebody will put that in the chat. But in reality, set-asides, when you think about women-owned small business set-asides, they were for less than $1 billion. I think it was like 800 something million, and we'll see that in a second maybe. But it's far less than 1%. What I'm really trying to drive at is your success if you're a woman-owned small business, but really if you're a small business, your success will not come because of the government and something they do, not the Congress, not agencies, not even contracting officers. Your success, in this case, women-owned small businesses, their success, that 26 billion came because they ran a solid business. They had a solid process for doing sales. They had solid past performances that allowed them to compete and win. Women-owned small businesses won because of them. That's the idea I'm trying to communicate today, is that you can do that same thing. But there should be more women-owned small business set-asides and HUBZone, et cetera. And so I want to teach you about that. Let's go ahead and check this out in real time. Okay, I just want to show you really quick, how can you search which agencies? I'm going to go really fast because I want to watch my time. But this is USA Spending. If you're not familiar with it, it's usaspending.gov. Inside of here, you just hit Start Search Award, and I'm going to show you a couple of search terms really fast. I'm only looking at FY 2023, and I'm going to close that. I'm going to try to close that. I'm going to scroll up. Right here is this thing called award type. I'm just going to make sure I choose contracts. That way, I'm only looking at contracts, not grants and all this other stuff. And then what I want to do is I want to come down here to set-asides, and let's pick HUBZones for a moment, right? If you're a HUBZone small business, I'm going to say HUBZone set-aside, HUBZone sole source, and search. When I do this search, I'm able to go find out which agencies love HUBZone firms. And so the first thing you see is $1 billion was either sole sourced or set aside to HUBZone firms. And either one's kind of good, right? And so I'm going to come in here to this tab called categories. And when you scroll up, you'll see it starts with agencies. Just click on sub-agencies. In here, I can immediately see which agencies love HUBZone small businesses. First off, Discount Army. For every single small business, you should be trying to get in the Army. Nobody loves small businesses like the Army. Like 3 to 1, 4 to 1 on the money spent, the Army spends over any other agency, including like other military ones. And so let's just assume everybody should be trying to get in the Army, in my opinion, right? So then you look at, well, who else is on here? And you can start looking in. Like one of the things I see right away is that is DHS. This is DHS. This one here, it's a little harder because I could look and find it, but it just says an office name. Right there, U.S. Coast Guard is DHS. So instantly in the top 10, I'm seeing 3 are DHS. That's pretty impressive. Actually, if I come back here, I'd probably see that. There you go. So the Army is what pushed DOD ahead of DHS, in my opinion. But when you look at last year, $235 million was set aside for HUBZone firms. The very next one is 70 million. So the DHS spent 3 times as much as the next. Look at this, HHS. I'm not saying they're not small business friendly, because I just did an article the other day saying HHS is a very small business friendly organization, but they're not. They don't love HUBZones, right? Not like DHS. And I don't need anybody to come tell me they do. The numbers tell me they don't love HUBZones as much as DHS. And so this is what I want you to learn to do, is figure out how to come in and go, well, what's my designation? You might take it one step further, and I'll just show you one more thing. If I say, let me go look at, let's say I'm a software developer, and I type in 541 512. So this is a NAICS code that might be software development. I'm just going to pick that one and come up here and hit submit search. And you can see the search terms across. And one of the things, I'll come back here. So 97 million went to HUBZone. So some money did go to HUBZones in there. And if I look at who actually did it, come on, you got data. There you go. It's live, right? So DHS jumps to the front, which is pretty cool. But let's look at which agencies are I don't know why it's not. I was sorry, I was screwing that up. I was hitting sub awards. Right here are the sub agencies, right? So you can see DISA. DISA definitely tries. I've seen DISA really increase the amount of sources sought notices they put out, targeting HUBZones to see if they can get HUBZones to respond. So DISA is a very good agency to be tracking. But then you look at Coast Guard is DHS, FEMA is DHS. Some of these other ones I'm not really familiar with. So actually inside of DHS, I can see that really I want to be targeting Coast Guard and FEMA as a hub zone. It doesn't mean that's the only place, but I'm telling you, these are the people who love us. And that's what you want to learn, is be able to use this tool on your own. I just reset it really quick. I want to walk through one more time to show you how I do it. Again, I choose time period, fiscal year, and I close that so I can see award type. And I choose contract and I close that. And now let's say I want to go to women-owned small business set-asides. Come down here to the bottom. And down here, there's two different, so there's women-owned small business, sole source of set-aside. And then right here is economically disadvantaged. So I'm just grouping them all together. And when I sort it, I can come in and see that, there you go, there's the $1 billion that was set aside to women-owned small businesses, like I mentioned. And if I come into categories and I let it sort for 1 second, let data, this is doing pretty good in live training. Come on, data, come on. Let me switch over to sub-agencies, see if I get it. There you go. So sub-agencies. So if I'm looking at women-owned small business, now, come on, hold on 1 second. There you go. So now you can see, again, the Army, always a standout. But in this case, you see the Navy and the Air Force are trying to do a pretty decent job. And then it's a hit or miss on all of them, right? You got HHS, you got Department of Commerce, you got USAID. So you got a little bit of everybody. But clearly, DOD loves women-owned small businesses more than others. They make the attempt. They do the set-asides. If you have a product or service and you're trying to push, you can go to these agencies and find more reception. Okay, so let me close that and go back here. Okay, so how can you push opportunities to set-asides? And I got like 5, 6, 7 minutes to say this. First off, the most important thing to remember, and again, there's always people with different opinions, but for the most part, what I'm telling you is based on what I see across hundreds and hundreds of contract shops, not just people, right? And so the responding to a sources sought is where the acquisition, the marketing, research and acquisition decisions get made around smalls. It can happen many other times, yes, and I'm going to talk about those in a second, but sources sought is where the contract shop is trying to get out and go, hey, are there small businesses? Are there women-owned small businesses that could do this? They're trying to determine, where should we set this aside? Should it go full and open? Could it go small? Could it even go to women-owned small business? Forget about that thing called the rule of two. I hear people talk about it all the time. When I look at a rule, and it's the rule of two, meaning if 2 qualified people might show up at the RFP phase or at the proposal stage or something, then I quadruple that or whatever 5 times and 6 times is that, right? Think about it as a rule of 10. You want to make sure that 10 women-owned small businesses are getting in there. If only you and one other person are getting in there, what you're forgetting, a lot of us get caught up going, well, there's 2 women-owned small business. They should set aside a women-owned small business. Well, you're forgetting about 20 HUBZones showed up. You know, so the idea is you want to get these 20 friends, is what I call it, with your designation. Let's just use women-owned small business as the set aside for the moment. You want to get 20 women-owned small businesses that are in a similar space as you. In fact, what I would try to find is some that, and this is a little in my favor, but that's fine, sales, is you want to find, if I do SharePoint, I want to find a bunch of people who do software development and who do maybe broader Microsoft or something. SharePoint's very specialized. I don't want to go find 20 specialized SharePoint. I don't want to find my direct competitors, but I want to find people who would be attracted to an opportunity, but maybe their responses won't be as great as mine. There's nothing wrong with that, but the idea is you're trying to get people to respond to the sources sought, and you're not collaborating, you're just coordinating. Hey, let's all respond, right? Or maybe you're not coordinating, but you're collaborating, something like that. But you're just trying to say, you respond, you respond, you respond. We'll all try to respond and push it to women of small business. I have a paragraph that I put out. If you respond and you're here live, I will give it to you. If you're not live, I'm not giving it to you, because I just want to make it a thank you for those showing up early or live and engaging in the chat, right? That's a really valuable thing to a network. But I'll give you a template paragraph that I include in responses and sources sought that I would recommend you do this. We did this over 400 opportunities and had a lot of success with it. And now some of the people who were with us have gone off and created their 20 friend groups. and they do it on their own, but they still use that paragraph. 5 years later, I still see an email that somebody is using that same paragraph. It's a really good paragraph, but basically the idea is when you're responding to a sources sought, you want to ask for a set aside for one of your tags, right? So if you're a woman-owned and an 8A small business, don't ask for both. Either ask for the 8A or ask for woman-owned small business. But don't sit there and say HUBZone and woman-owned small business. Either one, you choose, because then you never pushed it. You were just kind of leaving it back in their hands. But if you've got 20 women-owned small businesses who are responding and all of you are saying, please set this aside to women-owned small business, then maybe you're eliminating out some of these folks. Like, for example, if you're an 8A small business and a woman-owned small business, if you push it to women-owned small business, then maybe you're not having to compete as much with A and Cs who are in the 8A small business program, those billion-dollar type firms that compete with single-person owners. Okay, and the other thing is you want to look at ops in FPDS, the opportunities that are expiring, right? Here's a tip for you that I love doing is I love going to look and find opportunities like I did in USA Spending or FPDS, and finding opportunities that I wish I could have won that are the recipient, the prime contractor is a woman-owned small business, for our example, right? A woman-owned small business won it. They're the prime contractor, but it was not set aside to small business. It went full and open, or it was not set aside to small woman-owned small business. What I would do is go back into the contracting officer early and try to push that to women-owned small business set aside by starting with, it's the incumbent is a woman-owned small business. Why don't you push it aside? And you still have to compete against the incumbent, but it doesn't matter. You're always going to have to compete. But if it's a set aside for woman-owned small business, now you've shrunk that pool down and you can really try to drive towards it. The last thing I just want to point out here is get an early start with the long-range acquisition forecast. And actually, I have it here. It's faster, but it shows up on Commerce as an example. I went into Department of Commerce. I come in here and I can look at a lot of opportunities. And I'm going to go really fast, just watching time. But this is where, if you haven't seen long-range acquisition forecasts, this is where they put opportunities coming down the pike, right? The next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. And so if you come over, though, what am I looking for? So if you come over, wait 1 second. I think it is this guy. So you see all these set aside, total small business, right? And then this one says to. What I'm recommending is you go in and find the opportunities that you like that are slam dunk opportunities for your company. And if they're not like set aside to HUBZone or 8A, but even if they were, but more importantly, if they're not, if it's unrestricted, like what is that? That's 250,000 to 500K. I would get in fast and try to push that $200,000 opportunity to HUBZone, to woman-owned small business. So this is a great way to think about getting in and pushing it early. I do all sorts of other training on capture and how do you shape an opportunity. But the way you shape it is fundamentally just contact the buyer and try to have a conversation with them and ask them, give them reasoning on why it'd be a good idea to set an opportunity aside. Okay, here's what I want you to remember as we head out of today's training. First off, if you're going to do this activity that I'm talking about, buyers are going to look at you in DSBS. You can only reach out to so many buyers, but buyers are like 98% of the activity that happens in sales, them looking for small businesses like yours. So make sure DSBS is squared away. I just had a customer a couple of weeks ago get contacted by a buyer wanting them to come in and bid on 3 different larger contracts, not huge, but larger, all because they found them in DSBS. So make sure you are squared away in DSBS. The second thing is put language in place into your sources sought responses for setting it aside to woman-owned small business or 8A small business or SDVO, et cetera. Put that language into your sources sought. Directly ask on that first page, please set this aside to women-owned small business. If you're live, I'll give you a template paragraph if you just put template email into the chat. And the last thing is find 20 other firms. Let's say you're a woman-owned small business. Begin to find 20 other small businesses and say, this is what I want to do. I want to push for more set-asides at the Army for women-owned small businesses in our space. Are you interested in us collaborating where we just touch base and try to do that? Sure. And so build that, and then you're not going alone. You've got 19 others who are really trying to push opportunities towards your set-aside. Again, put in the chat, template email if you want help. If you're looking for help growing your company, taking it to the next level, and you're doing $1 million plus, $2 million plus, reach out to us. We got a BD Accelerator workshop. Love to talk to you about it. You can find that at govconchamber.com/workshop. For all of us, as you remember this set-aside training, government contracting is not a secret. Neither is set-asides, right? It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.